Hey y'all, Bob with Million Mile Garage. Good news first, the Duster's back together and running, although it's not back together again because the brand new AC compressor clutch I put on had a bad pulley bearing, and I knew it right off because it sounded like there was a blower underneath the hood. And when you turn the air conditioner on, the bearing noise would go away, and that's how I knew it was this bearing and not that bearing or that bearing, and I'll show you why. As you can see, the shaft for the clutch presses through the inner snout on the bearing, or inner race, and then the outer race is pressed into here. Here's the old one I took apart for practice. And the way that you get this part out is I use a 3-jaw puller and a socket. Of course, you got to remove that circlip, and then you press the clutch out, you know, this way. It's going to push it down and come out. And then before you drive the old bearing out, I took this sleeve from a ball joint kit. It's this gray box right here. That's just a ball joint press sleeve, and I use that to support it so that when you press this bearing out, I've got a 12-ton shop press. You want to be real careful about not flexing this part right here because you'll bend it and it'll make the pulley wobble. So that worked out really good. Just for the heck of it, I had popped the seal out on one of the new clutch assemblies just to see if it had enough grease in it, and I'll tell you why. When I had this one on the bench, it made an unbelievable noise, and I'll show you that in a minute. Here's the new one. It's all back together. It looks really good. And we'll just do a quick comparison and show you the difference between a loud bearing, or in this case a quiet bearing, and then the loud bearing. And I actually had spun this in the other video and thought it sounded a little loud, didn't think anything of it, but boy was it loud. And they actually are notchy. I can actually feel the notchiness in it when I turn it. So I suspect that however they were putting these together in China for Murray now, instead of using, you know, American labor, they must not be properly supporting this part of the bearing when they drive this thing in from the front, is what I'm guessing. And I don't know how they're doing it, but it must be brittling the bearing surfaces. Either they're flattening the balls, or they're doing something. And boy, I just could not believe the noise. Let me show you the next frame. So yeah, here's the noisy one. I still got the duct tape on it. But when I spin this, hopefully you can hear that over the heater. Oh good, the heater shut off. Hear that noise? It is really loud. And when I position it just right, I can actually feel a notchiness in it, which is kind of weird. So yeah, you shouldn't be able to feel any notchiness in a bearing, and it's definitely going to be noisy if you do. Very unfortunate. Let me show you what the quiet one sounds like. Oh, one other helpful tip. That circlip right there, when you get real close to setting the gap, which is about 15 thousandths, you want to take it out of the press, put the circlip on, even though it won't be over the, where is this thing right here? Let me show you real quick. Oh, yeah. Glad I didn't catch that with my toe. If you just place the circlip on top, which, you know, you got to use your snap ring pliers, and I got to say, I finally broke down and bought a set of these last year, and it's been a godsend, like having decent snap ring pliers. And you get that over like that, set in place, and then you take an old bearing and place it just like that, and then when you finish pressing it in, it'll click in place, click, and that way you can't go too far, because if you go too far, you're going to close the gap, and then you got to get the 3 jaws out and monkey with it. And I really don't like to do that to a new bearing. I like to just press it in once and be done with it. But anyway, let me show you what a quiet one's like, and then I'll let y'all go. All right, here's the quiet one. There's my new 8-year-old bearing, and it doesn't work. Let me tighten this up so I don't drop it. Yeah, I was looking for my my feeler gauge as well. If I can get that to go in there. Yep. It just barely drags in. I'm trying to get the light so y'all can see it. That's set at 15 thousandths. Like I said, I like to set them a little tight. I actually probably could have backed this off just a tad, pushing it the other way with the snap ring in, because I can see a little gap on the top here. And you could open that gap up probably maybe 2 thousandths. But it just barely doesn't touch. And you know, once this runs in, the gap's going to open up. The problem is, when you run them a long time, like this one was, you can see it's got a groove worn in the edge. Maybe you can't see it that good. Kind of looks like that braking disc on the Maxim I showed you all the other day when I tried to get it off. It had a lip worn in it from the pad. Same deal here. So this thing had worn down so far that I think it was actually overextending. You see where it fits into the groove here. It was actually overextending, and I guess these springs don't overextend much, and then they bend, and then they don't spring back like they used to, because you can see a gap. between some of the rubber bumpers here. I don't know if you can see that. There's one of them that doesn't touch. Maybe it's the way I'm holding it. Anyway, yes, that one. There's a gap between the rubber bumper and the plate here, the stopper. And so basically what it was doing is, even when the clutch wasn't on, it was dragging, makes an awful noise, kind of irritating. But that clutch was basically used up. The surfaces were worn away too far. Kind of interesting. And oh, just an observation, the new Murray one did not have the shield for the bearing seal. And you can't remove it on this one. I don't know how they put it in. It looks like this is, they place it in and then they weld it on or something. I'm assuming that's not pressed in as well. Kind of weird. Maybe it's furnace brazed or something, but I couldn't get that out. Would have been nice to have that in place, but evidently the Chinese one doesn't need it for some reason. Anyway, just thought I'd share that with y'all. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll get this thing out on the road here pretty soon. I got a lot of cleanup to do in the garage here. We got company coming for the holidays, and I'm starting to use the steps as shelves. My poor Camaro. I got most of the stuff off the other Camaro, but yeah, I think I got about 2 hours of cleanup to do in here. I think the relatives are going to use the my office upstairs as a apartment while they're here. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.